Thanks for being with me tonight. I'm Johnny Robertson, and this is What Does the Bible Say? It is a special 10th edition. We are live here in the studios in Reidsville, North Carolina. We're broadcasting into basically 5 counties in this area, 2 different states, into some large areas like Greensboro, North Carolina, through Time Warner, Comcast Cable, different setups. And so we're also streaming, I understand. Hope we can check on that to make sure that our stream is going out on YouTube. So essentially, individuals are potentially, I say, they're watching everywhere. And tonight is a big night in our lives as we try to present the truth and try our very best to present it in a way that causes individuals to find themselves closer to God, more in tune with reality. And that's really one of the big problems that we have, is people being in tune with reality. We have the Church of Christ on the one hand, and you know, if we don't watch out, we can end up being just like the Jewish nation when Jesus came along. We can see ourselves as individuals that are in position of having had the truth. Now, this is the way the Jews were depicted by Jesus and by Paul, as having the truth, being the oracle. And we'll just basically read that from Romans chapter 3, verse 1. What advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there in circumcision? Well, much in every way, chiefly because that unto them was committed the oracles of God. Well, if you haven't noticed, the Church of Christ is the it is the group of people, it is the church, it is the assembled saved that is in your community constantly saying that we have the truth, we're following the Bible. But what if we're not? What if we decrease and decline just like the Jewish nation did? Then are we any better? Are we in a better position to speak to the people outside than they were? And the answer is no. So on the one hand, we have the Church of Christ, and I have to worry about the Church of Christ. You ever stop to wonder how it is that I'm on these broadcasts night after night? This particular week, we're going to be on for 2 weeks. I mean, this is a all-out blitz. Tonight, we can go till 2 in the morning. And we have no holes barred. And as I mentioned last night, or it was last night, we don't answer to anybody but God. But how do we do this? Well, at the end of the day, there are individuals in the churches of Christ throughout the world, literally. We have people that help us from Thailand, from Bangkok, Thailand. These books that we give away for free, Muscle and a Shovel When the Shovel Breaks, these people buy these by the case load for us and send them over here. And people give us money, and we put on these broadcasts, and we go door to door, and we do all this without ever asking you for a love gift. And that's the way we do this. And so we basically have the Church of Christ on the one side. We're trying to work with the Lord's church, the Church of Christ. And some of you realize in the last year that we've been in just a huge battle against the forces that would turn the Church of Christ into a denomination. On Wednesday night of last week and on Sunday of last week, I did 2 broadcasts where I connected all the dots of all of the loose living, the ungodly behavior trying to turn the Church of Christ, into a Church of Christ, like the Duck Dynasty. Are you aware that the Robertson family, the Duck Dynasty group, those people originated in the Church of Christ? That was the school that everybody wanted me to go to when I was living in Red River County in Texas. Go down to Louisiana, to the school down there, and it's such a great school. Do you know that school doesn't even exist? White's Ferry Road, it doesn't even exist anymore. The White's Ferry Road Church of Christ, it's now a small letter, Church of Christ. And the Duck Dynasty crowd that runs all over the place with the Baptists has wine distilleries, sells wine, cigars, does Dancing with the Stars, just a bunch of ungodly people. They house that building. And so I'm connecting the dots. Where was Willie Robertson? He was in one of our great so-called colleges of the Brotherhood of the Church of Christ. Not a college, in my opinion, that's associated with the Church of Christ at all. They might as well go ahead and just go ahead and get with the denominations where they belong. And this video is a expose of a college president in our brotherhood who is actually going to be, I'm going to say he epitomizes the political machinery, the hypocrisy, the political activity that goes on behind the scenes. So if you are a person who is associated with Freed Hardeman and you're watching our show, you might want to call one of your friends and start sharing this around, because we're going to expose one of the higher ups tonight in a tape, in an interview that I did, that actually demonstrates the level of unbelievable behavior that takes place in the arena when you have successful people coming into the same arena. Now, everybody in this arena, get this, not everybody in this arena is playing the same way. There are some people in this arena that are playing such a horrible game, like the powerful people in Jesus' day. Do you really think that Jesus cared about the political people in his day? This that I'm talking about, I believe, is the remedy for our problem. But we can't get the medicine. We can't get the medicine fixed. You see, here we are in the Church of Christ. We just looked at Romans chapter 3, verse 1. The Jewish community had the oracles of God. You know what that means? They had the instructions straight from God. And they so messed it up, so corrupted it because of their greed, their love of power, and their love of glory from men, that they just took over and they began to sit in Moses' seat, is what Jesus said about them in Matthew chapter 23. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, they actually made themselves God, is what Paul said. And so here we have today the church that Jesus established on the day of Pentecost. Everybody knows this. I mean, the Pentecostal church runs around calling themselves the church that you read about in the New Testament, because they get on television and do the baby talk, old glory Sunday. That's Jackie Poe's version of speaking in tongues. These people in the first century were speaking in known languages, not known to them, but the 15 different nations that were listening, they knew their language, and they were like, what in the world? These guys are speaking our language and they've never learned it. But we all know that the church was started on the day of Pentecost, but it's not the Baptist church. There was no Baptist church even recorded anywhere until the 1600s. It wasn't the Pentecostal church. I mean, these guys in the Pentecostal church over on the 700 Club, they admit that the Pentecostal church didn't start till 1902. So what we're saying is there was a church and there was information. The church simply means the called out people. It's the Greek word ecclesia, called out. They were called out by the gospel of Jesus Christ to behave themselves in the fashion that Jesus behaved himself, and according to the teachings that Jesus left behind to the apostles through the Holy Ghost, through the Holy Spirit. And it's recorded in this book. And the problem is the Church of Christ is not acting like the Church of Christ. And in 300 years, well, really in a generation, according to the New Testament, the gospel went out through all the known world. These folks were so zealous of this New Testament, new will and testament from God's own Son, that they would not, there was nothing that would stand in their way, not death. I mean, these guys wrote, there's martyrs, guys who gave up their life. They wrote letters to the Roman emperors, and they're called martyrs. And they said things like Tertullian said, we're mown down and our blood is seed. The more you mow us down, the more we multiply. Can you imagine somebody caring about their truth to that degree that they're willing to just be mown down, fed to the lions, burned in the streets, and yet they wouldn't change. They wouldn't go against Jesus. They wouldn't deny. Well, we've all seen the movie Braveheart. I don't even know how true it is, and it's well into time, but it depicts a guy who for no reason would he recant. No way would he give in that what he was doing was not right. These people in the New Testament, this is a real account, and it's not corrupted. It's been here for 2,000 years. And the Church of Christ is in your area, but the problem is the Church of Christ is not acting like the Church of Christ. They're acting in a fashion that resembles denominationalism more. They're changing the rules. Elders don't stand up against marriage, divorce, and remarriage. If the magistrate's not going to stand up for it, there is a stopgap measure. It's called elderships. It's called the shepherds that are in the flock. They're supposed to convict the gainsayer. Titus chapter 1, verse 9 and 10 says. They're supposed to hold up the sound doctrine. And evangelists are supposed to back them up. These guys are to set in order things that are lacking. They're supposed to stand in the gap. That's not happening. We have guys that are more concerned about their glory, their power, their paycheck. And we just have all kinds of unbelievable political power, envy, greed that is going on. And it's going on at all levels. And tonight, we're basically saying, when is enough going to be enough? When are we going to get to the point where we say, you know, what in the world? You know, every now and then, you have an opportunity. And I'm being very careful here, because I'm going to expose and then I'm going to promote. I'm going to promote one guy who won't promote himself, and I'm going to expose another guy who wants to promote himself. And I want to say, you know, before we even get started, folks, this could be monumental. One way or the other, I don't know which way this is going to go, because I'm about to call out a name of an extremely prominent individual in the churches of Christ. And I'm going to expose him. And then I'm going to promote a gentleman who is not promoting himself really at all. And I hold in my hand his second book. And this is really the reason why I'm willing to go out on a limb and promote this particular individual. And the reason why is because he's written a no-holds-barred book about his own inability to be your example of anything. He actually wrote a book called Muscle and Shovel, and it just simply means that you have to dig deep and you have to use the muscle that's in your head in order to find the truth. That's just all there is to it. And it's the truth in any field. If you're going to be a doctor, you have to use your brain, and you have to dig deep in your pocket, and you have to dig deep as far as perspiration is concerned to get your degree. If you're going to be a psychiatrist, same thing. If you're going to be a teacher, same thing. Any field that is worth anything, you have to dig deep and you have to use your muscle. And saving your soul through the grace of God, through his son, Jesus Christ, is no different. It's one of the most wonderful things in the world. And you have to dig deep to find the truth, because there's a bunch of garbage out here that's covering it up. You have to use your brain, and you have to think. You have to think like Troy had to think on the bus. That's why Troy's all stressed out tonight. I guarantee he's stressed out. I've already been with Troy 2 years ago. He was so stressed out that he's getting a lawyer if I ever text him again. Well, he's feeling better now. He's got a crowd around him that's okay in his marriage and all that. But he's stressed out tonight. Why? Because his arguments don't work. You have to dig past all this garbage to get to the truth. So Michael Shank wrote the book about himself working as he was a Baptist. He was working for a company, and he was actually selling things to churches, or he was going around and he was monitoring their equipment. And so he had a pool of many pastors that he could talk to. And he ran into a member of the Church of Christ that worked with him. And this guy began to show him that Baptist is not in the Bible. There's no Baptist church in the Bible. And he began to talk to him about his choice as far as saving his soul. And the more he talked to Michael, the more Michael realized, you know what? This guy's making sense. I believe I can see something here. My arguments aren't working. This guy named Randall, his arguments are working. So Michael starts he starts a notebook. And then he starts going out to all these pastors that he's monitoring their equipment. And he takes Randall's arguments out to these pastors, and they can't answer it. Or if they do make an answer, he brings it back to Randall, and Randall squashes it with the Bible. And after about a year of this, Michael says, you know, these pastors, they don't know anything about the Bible. They just make up stuff as they go. They're all divided up, arguing with each other, and none of them follow the New Testament. He said, I think I'm going to become a New Testament Christian. He eventually published the book. But you know something that we didn't know? We didn't know that Michael, in between the time he published the book and the time that some of us started knowing him as a gospel preacher, he actually fell away. He saw inside the Church of Christ. He saw that the Church of Christ was the truth in the Bible, and he wanted to tell everybody. But as he began to involve himself with the community of the Church of Christ, he began to realize, you know what? These folks, they're not on fire. They don't even act like they believe that they have the saving message of the New Testament for the world. They're just acting like everybody else. And he eventually fell away. Well, in between the time that he wrote the book and he became a gospel preacher, he decided that he would write a book. No, maybe I got that wrong. After he became a gospel preacher and he began to see what was going on in the churches, he decided to write a book and to tell you about his experience as a fallen away person in the Church of Christ, and dealing with the elders and the evangelists that are in the churches of Christ, and how it was just a hopeless situation. Nobody cared about him. And it's a tell-all. And let me tell you something, my friends. If you've read Muscle and Shovel, it's great. But if you've not read When the Shovel Breaks, I don't think you've seen yourself. When I read this book, it killed me to my soul. And this book is what's making me tonight be willing to promote Michael Shank as a regular person with feet of clay who has told you all of his problems in this book. And guess what? People still love him. But here's the deal. Only 14,000 people have read this book. Now, 400,000 of the other book, the first book about the account of him finding answers for his denominational issue and finding the true church, 400,000 of those have gone out. But when he wrote the other church, it's a tell-all about his own life and the problems inside the Church of Christ. I think that he told me there's only 14,000 issues of this one sold. Let me tell you something. The Church of Christ needs this information. I hope that you'll share this broadcast, if for nothing else, for this information. Now, at the same time, and the reason I'm willing to promote him is there's not any surprise for me about Michael Shank. Someone might say, Johnny, aren't you afraid to hitch yourself to Michael Shank? I'm not hitching myself to anybody. You know, it could be that Michael needs to be afraid to hitch himself to me, because next week I could fall down in the dirt and be as low as Jonah was when he was in the bottom of that whale's belly. You could just find out that, you know what, Johnny Robertson is a worthless wretch. You know what? Sometimes I am. I'm not always behaving myself. I don't mind hitching myself to this guy because you know what? He's already exposed that he is a human, that he's got all kinds of problems that all of us deal with, and he put it in this book. And he didn't do it to make himself look good. There is no way you write a book like this to make yourself look good. There's stuff in here that he tells about himself that you would just say, dude, I can't believe that you said that about yourself. And anytime this situation happens again that you just described and we're there, we're going to be eyeballing you. Well, you know, when a person actually tells you something about himself, he can always get better. You know, I'm worried right now that individuals are going to attack me as I bring this information out. But you know what? What can they attack me with? Because the Collinsville Church of Christ told everything there is to know about my past when I withstood them and basically set up another congregation across town and took their goods away from them that they had clinched, that they had gotten in the wrong way. That's all I'm going to say about it. When we took that from them and moved over across town and then began to evangelize the whole area with a gusto that we didn't even begin to have when I was there, they dug up my criminal record from 30-something years ago. So, you know, what are you going to bring up? Well, I'm sure there's something. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about a gentleman named Milton Sewell. Now, I had an inkling that Milton Sewell was actually saying derogatory things about Michael Shank's book. You know, there are other people in our brotherhood that says Michael Shank's first book is not true. It's all made up. I've read some of the emails. They demanded to know who Randall was. You know, if you don't tell us who Randall is, the guy who taught you, the other person in the book, if you don't tell us who he is so we can go and investigate him, we're going to expose you for the liar that you are. Oh, really? Is that how that works? Other authors in the Church of Christ who can't sell anything because basically they're acting like the Pharisees, the Jews, and the Sadducees, the ruling class that was in control of Judaism when Jesus came on the scene. These folk want to be looked up to. They want to be idolized. They're the ones that I actually exposed on Wednesday and Sunday of last week, running around at Bear Valley, Faulkner University, Harding University, Lipscomb University, Pepperdine University, Oklahoma Christian University. Are they all in bed together? You better believe it. I played clips of the guy that's putting the lectureship together in OCU over there, Stafford North, saying, man, Pepperdine, remember, it's not a peppermint stick on your tree. It's Pepperdine. It's a college. And the guy who is running the lectureship is named Jerry Rushford. He's been inviting denominational people over there to that college, so-called Church of Christ, Brotherhood College. And Stafford North says, man, his lessons are really, they're always sound when he's over here. Seriously? That's all out on YouTube, Wednesday night and Sunday night's broadcast. And so I'm basically saying these guys that have been envious of Michael, they'll just do anything. And so when I heard that Milton Sewell said that, I asked for an interview. I called him up. left a message on his machine. He heard the message and he called me back, and we had an interview on the record for Religious Review. And this is what he said about Michael Shank's book. Take a listen.
I don't have a lot of confidence in it right now. I thought the book was good, and I read the second book too, and I thought it was good too. But I don't. Well, I've somebody that, well, my wife read through it. She said, I don't believe that all these things happen in the way that they want about it. She said, there's something about it. She's a writer. Oh. She said, something about it that just doesn't. I think the idea is good. I think it's a great story. That's in it right now. I thought the book was good, and I read the second book too, and I thought it was good too. But I don't. Well, I've somebody that, well, my wife read through it. She said, I don't believe that all these things happen in the way that they want about it. She said, there's something about it. She's a writer.
Oh, she's a writer too. The other guy that's writing these emails that says that Randall is a made-up, fictitious person, that there's no such person as Randall. We all know Randall's not his name. Michael didn't name the guy because the guy didn't want the notoriety, but he's a real person. The other guy said, he's fictitious. I don't believe it. He's a writer too. Guess you probably, most people in the Church of Christ never heard of him. And his books are not selling very well. Guess what? When you go to some of the seminars that this other envious person conducts, when you get to your chair, there'll be a free copy of Michael Shank's book waiting on you. Well, wait a minute. I'm running this little seminar. Why aren't my books in the chair? Because your books are no good. Everybody everybody doesn't. Unfortunately, people don't realize that there's a lot of fakes and phonies out there in the Church of Christ who are very famous. I don't know Milton Sewell's wife either. You know why? Never heard of her book. But she's a writer. And since she read the book, and she's a writer, and she says, this book's not true. So is that really how books sell? One writer looks at another writer's material, and the writer says, this is not true. Wait a minute. Could it be that writer A that's looking at writer B's material, that they've got some other issue going on? I mean, there's other people like myself. I think the book is true. I actually know Michael Shank. I visited in his home, broken bread with the man. He and his wife spent time with him, hours and hours and hours on the phone, 2, 3 in the morning, discussing with him. I think the book is true. I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. And you know what? I don't really have anything to lose by promoting a gentleman who basically is a self-defaming, humble individual who's just trying to help people find the truth. Muscle and a shovel, and when the shovel breaks. You want to see yourself? When the shovel breaks. It is a fantastic picture of how individuals become when they fall away from the Lord. The beautiful part of the story is it's also filled with hope, because Michael, with the grace of God and our Lord Jesus Christ's help, he gets back on his feet. And he's now trying to help individuals to see the truth and to help individuals see the church, in the church, see the church, how it really is. He talks about elders and preachers. I mean, he knows them, let me tell you. Misbehavior. I'm going to assist him by telling you how the schools are. I don't have any confidence in any of these schools. None of them. Faulkner, Lipscomb, OCU, Barron Valley, Freed-Hardeman, Pepperdine, none of them. From the head to the foot, corrupt. And I can prove it. If I have to prove it without anybody's accreditation or anybody saying, Johnny, do this or not, I can do that. I basically have made up my mind that I'm going to keep this broadcast on the air for a year if everybody that knows me drops my support. I'm going to keep the broadcast for a year. I tell you what, in a year, I can just about prove anything that's true. And it is true. I've already demonstrated that Freed Hardeman is right in the middle of this bed of unbelievable ungodliness. Milton Sewell is on the board of directors of the Christian Chronicle. If you're a member of the Church of Christ and you're listening to me, you know the Christian Chronicle has been corrupt for years. Lynn McMillan on the board, he's the editor. Lynn McMillan is still publishing Lynn Anderson. Who's Lynn Anderson? In 1983, called the Church of Christ one big sick denomination. J. Lockhart was still using him on television in 1993. I can prove that. It's on my YouTube site. J. Lockhart is on the board of directors at Freed Hardeman, and J. Lockhart is a continual participant in OCU with people from Pepperdine, people from Abilene. I talked to him on tape also and asked him, would he oppose them? No, he's not going to oppose them. But Freed Hardeman is the last bastion of sound doctrine. Really? How can they be sound if Milton Sewell's on the board of the directors of the Christian Chronicle? And here's a guy who is willing to defame Michael Shank for what? He cannot prove from his wife being an author that Michael Shank made up this account. That's just not possible. That's not verifiable information. That's not empirical evidence. That's just somebody saying, my wife's an author. Well, she can look into her crystal ball and see that these people didn't exist and that his memoirs are really not true. It's all made up. It's just too fabulous. It just can't be. His books are selling 400,000. They can't get enough of them over at Freed Hardeman. Listen, folks, that's where we are tonight. And that's my broadcast. I'm Johnny Robertson. This is What Does the Bible Say? And it's no holds barred. Whether you like it, whether you don't, just dissect it and ask the question, is it the truth? God bless you. Good night.